Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending the Using eCart for the ESG-CAPER webinar. My name is Dan Fox. I work for the Cloudburst Group. I'm a HUD TA provider. Today we'll be hearing from Marlisa Grogan from the SNAPS office and Michelle Budzik from the Partnership Center. And I also want to mention that we have Joel Remigio, David Durkowski, and Meredith Allspaw on the phone to handle some Q&A on the back end. So I'm going to go over a couple quick housekeeping tips here before I hand this over to Marlisa. And we just want to make sure that everyone knows this webinar will last about an hour. We'll have hopefully some time for some Q&A at the end. We will post the recording and the slides and the transcript of this on the HUD Exchange. It takes us a little bit to get everything posted just because we have to have everything reviewed for 508 compliance to make sure that persons with disabilities are able to access the materials. So if you have any issues, sometimes when we have very large groups like this, sometimes people can have trouble getting in. And I want to make sure that everyone knows that typically calling in on the telephone works better for audio quality. But if you're having trouble with the webinar in general, just make sure you log out and then log back in, and typically that works. And also, we do have a chat pane available for people to use if you know you're having an issue and can't figure it out. Feel free to send a chat message to the organizers. That said, we ask that, you know, except for what I just mentioned, we ask that you not use the feature. This is because we want to try to be able to track your questions, and the Q&A gives us the best ability to do that. Plus, on the back end, we're able to get a report of all the questions because we probably won't be able to answer all of them today. So please use the question function of GoToWebinar. It's, you know, should be on the right-hand side of your screen there. If you don't get your questions answered today, there's always, of course, the Ask a Question. Just make sure when you submit your question that in step 2, you know, once you complete the information about yourself and, you know, your email and all that information. In step 2, make sure that you select that your question is related to the emergency solution grants. Make sure it gets directed to the correct pool. And with that, Marlisa, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. This is Marlisa Grogan from the SNAPS office at HUD. It's really great to be here with you all to share the new and improved ESG-CAPER Annual Reporting Tool, what we're affectionately calling eCart. And to make sure this process is as clear and as straightforward as possible for everyone. So today we're going to be reviewing specifically the data flow from HMIS all the way through to the Econ Planning Suite, uploading subrecipient CSV files into eCart, correcting data validation errors, using the eCart to filter ESG data, embedding eCart into a Word document, attaching eCart to the CAPER in the Econ Planning Suite, and troubleshooting common eCart problems that will sort of be interspersed throughout the webinar. So before getting into the specific features of eCart itself, let's just go through some background information about the eCart requirement and how it fits into the larger context of ESG-CAPER reporting requirements. So ESG recipients are required to report in the Econ Planning Suite and IDIS on all ESG-funded activities carried out during the reporting period. That's the recipient's program year. The ESG-specific CAPER screens are listed right here in front of you. There's CR60, subrecipient information, which is manually completed using internal records. That's how it was in the past, and that's how it will continue. CR65 persons assisted. This is really the one screen that gets affected by the new requirement. Do not complete any of these tables. You're just going to disregard the tables on CR65, and instead you're going to attach the eCart file to CR00. This is, again, the only screen that's affected by the new requirement, and we're going to get into attaching the eCart to CR00 later on. Screen CR70, assistance provided and outcomes. That's manually completed using internal records, the same as it was before. And CR75 expenditures, which you've used in the past to manually complete using internal financial records, and you'll continue to do so. you can refer to the Con-Plan Desk Guide, which is available on the HUD Exchange. Make sure that you're accessing the March 2015 version for detailed information about how to complete screens CR60, CR70, and CR75. We'll provide a link to this resource and a few others at the end of the webinar, but that's a good reference to have in the back of your mind. So here's a little bit more background information. Recipients are not going to be required to use eCart until they are drafting and submitting the CAPER for their 2015 program year. So recipients with the earliest program year start date begin their 2015 program year in October of 2014, and they just ended September 30th, 2015. So if you're one of these recipients with really early program year start dates with CAPERs due this December 31st, 2015, be aware that these new requirements are applicable to you. So it's not just a matter of having your CAPER due after October 1st, 2015. If you have an extension or something, it's for your 2015 program year, your 2015 CAPER. That's when you'll start using the eCart tool. So through these ESG CAPER enhancements, ESG recipients are going to be reporting for the first time on program outcomes, such as housing destination at program exit and other important measures, such as the length of time between the program participant's entry date and their move-in date for rapid rehousing projects. So there are a few really unique outputs and outcomes now that'll afford you the ability to show the impact that your programs are having in your communities. And so these updates will also enable HUD to collect national ESG program data that helps us justify funding for the ESG program, and it also helps us substantiate the program's effectiveness. And so the data you report through eCart, it brings the ESG program in line with the COC program annual performance report, which gives communities an improved ability to coordinate system-wide performance measurement throughout the COC geographic area. Let me turn the presentation over to Michelle so she can start reviewing some important terms. Michelle?
Hi, all. So we're just going to go through a few terms and make sure that you are on the same page we are with what we're talking about. So eCard, of course, is the brand new tool that you're going to use. There was a upgrade to the tool that was posted on the HUD Exchange yesterday, and you're going to want to download that latest and greatest upgrade tool. If you've already downloaded another one, you can consider that other one a play tool and this one the real tool. A CSV, we'll talk about that quite a bit. CSV means comma separated value, and it's the way in which the HMIS system, the Homeless Management Information System in your community, is going to export the information from HMIS over onto eCart. The CSV file will be used to populate the eCart tool with all of the data that came out of HMIS. So the good news here is there's not a whole lot of typing and you know, like pulling reports and typing them into a new system. It should all happen for you automatically. The next term we're going to look at then is projects, just so you're clear. I know that oftentimes folks get confused about the terms we're using. So projects is referring to the on-the-ground activity in a community, like the emergency shelter, the transitional housing. HUD used the word program to refer to the funding source. So ESG program and an emergency shelter project. And then the components of the projects are those things that are the eligible categories that ESG allows you to fund. So ESG allows you to fund shelters or street outreach or RH or homeless prevention, and in shelters, then you're allowed to fund essential operating and renovation. Those are components. So let's take a look at, I know we've already gotten a question on this, who has to do what here, and how does this stuff flow? So the recipient in the case of ESG is the jurisdiction that has received the money. They're sometimes in old-fashioned terms called the grantee, right? They are the recipient of that entitlement funding that's coming to the community, and for which they then subgrant that out to subrecipients. Sometimes they do the work themselves, sometimes they grant it out, but when we speak of subrecipients here, we're speaking of the work actually being done on the ground. So the homeless provider is the subrecipient. They are the ones that have entered the data into HMIS. They are the ones that will be required to run the ESG-CAPER report in HMIS and send it to the recipient. So the ESG-funded shelter will be running the CSV file and sending it to their city or their state. They send it in a zip file, and when the recipient, the city or the state, gets that zipped file via email to them, they gather those files and upload them into Ecart. So depending on who you are listening to this, you should be able to figure out what your role is in this format. You will notice that there's no role here pointed out for the COC or the HMIS lead agency. In this process, we are assuming that the subrecipient can actually press a print button and generate a CSV file that will be able to go over to their recipient or jurisdiction. If that is not the case, then the HMIS lead agencies would be the place that you would go for help, and they should be able to point you to how to do that or work with your vendor to get that out. When we go into Ecart, it's a simple Excel file that's been all configured for you. It's not that complex. Always remember that you can always throw it in the trash can, download a new one, and start again. This should not be a scary experience. There's nothing you're going to do here that you can totally screw up your uploads and not correct. So when you open Ecart, you're going to see an introduction tab. It has embedded for you the guidebook, the Ecart guidebook, and it is up to date with whatever tool you're looking at and has troubleshooting tips. Each one of those sections, if you click on it, is a link, and it will open the section for you, and you'll be able to read it. You can print out just that page if you want. You can move to the previous page or the next page. It's just a guidebook, but it's always there right on your desktop, ready for you to use whenever you need to use it while you're in Ecart. The next slide shows you the Ecart Import Data tab, and that tab is where you're going to go to import your data. You're going to fill out the cells in yellow, which are basic information. It's what jurisdiction, what's your year, who's submitting this information, telephone numbers. Each time you fill it out, the fields that are required are really clearly marked there with a red. The checkbox shows the answer. Ecart is filled out by the jurisdiction, not by the subrecipient. It's filled out by the recipient. So if you're a subrecipient listening to this, you don't have to fill this out. This all you do is send your file folder to the jurisdiction, And now the jurisdiction is going to fill this out. They're going to press click here and choose a folder and import that data. And we're going to show you a live demonstration of this in a minute so that you can see that. And we're just going through the screens right now. So let's go to the next screen that shows you what, when your data comes in, there's a check your data screen. It's going to tell you if you've imported two projects, two of the same projects. So oftentimes, you know, if you're a large jurisdiction with a bunch of projects, maybe two people have been working on this and been importing data at different times as they're coming in or something. The same file could get put in there twice. eCart's going to tell you that you duplicated it. On the next slide, you'll see that eCart will also take a look at the data as it comes in. So literally what happens when you import the data is eCart flattens your data, reads your data, decides if you've made any mistakes, and automatically makes your data into reports. And it all happens in the space of a few seconds while you're importing the data. It's really kind of cool. In the check your data section, it will show you where there's errors in the data. And Marlisa's going to talk a little bit here about data errors and what's allowable and what's not allowable in terms of data errors. Marlisa?
Yes, I'm here. I just wanted to jump in and clarify what we mean by resolving the 25% error rate. So if the data on any project exceeds the 25% error rate, then the subrecipient for that project should be asked to review and correct their data and resubmit a CSV file, CSV report. But if in working with the subrecipient, the recipient is unable to correct the data, an example that we give here is that the subrecipient just didn't collect the information, or there are just other functionality issues, then the recipient should explain the situation and provide a reason why the error rate could not be resolved in a narrative text box in screen CR65. So just add a narrative text box as you normally would if you were to do so in the Econ Planning Suite, and include in that explanation, along with the reason why you can't resolve it, the corrective action that you plan to take for the future. And so that's a way to show you, the field office, the representative that's reviewing your CAPER, that yes, I do have a high error rate, I didn't resolve it, but here's the reason why, and here's the way I'm trying to address it in the future. And then we also wanted to bring up a question that I'm sure many of you may have, and that's what happens if I just can't get this together and I can't comply with the eCart requirement. So in particular, in regards to comparable databases, HUD does expect that those comparable databases have the functionality to extract ESG data using HMIS software or ESG-CAPER, or the generation tool, so that the recipients in turn can upload the data into eCart. But when a subrecipient just can't meet that standard, the recipient should contact the local HUD field office and me, Marlisa Grogan, my email address is right there, to request an exception to this eCart requirement for good cause. And when we're talking about good cause, that's a subrecipient is working to upgrade its comparable database to perform the CSV export, but you're just not going to, the subrecipient is going to have the upgrade in time for the CAPER submission. So in situations like that, we would consider an exception. But the subrecipient does need to have an acceptable plan and a timeline for coming into compliance. And I just want to clarify the first bullet. When we are talking about comparable databases and their functionality, the bullet does say using HMIS software, but for comparable databases, you're really limited to the ESG-CAPER generation tool. So we are updating the CAPER generation tool. It's not available yet. It should be available very shortly, but that would be another good cause, another reason to contact the field office and me to request an exception if you're concerned about meeting any deadlines. So we hope that this additional info helps clarify some of the questions that have been coming up. But in all cases, if you still need additional assistance in addressing a particular situation, feel free to submit an AAQ, and we can talk through the specific challenges that you might be dealing with. Having said that, I'm going to turn it back to Michelle.
So I've had the ability just to read the voluminous number of questions about domestic violence while Marlise has been talking, and HUD is not putting out a comparable database for domestic violence victims. They're expected to have and have been using a comparable database all this time. They were required to do that for the COC program years ago if they got COC program funding, and are now and have been required to do it for ESG since HARF. So this isn't a new thing, and getting reports from them should not be a new thing. What is probably a new thing, and we recognize it, is that there are systems that may or may not really be compatible to HMIS, may or may not be able to generate this report. So those were the kinds of exceptions that Marlise talked about. Looking at the, going back to Ecart then, Ecart's going to be able to generate reports. As soon as you put your data in, Ecart will fill up the combined report, and you'll have a combined report of all of the reports that are in Ecart's system right away. And there's a way to do reports with filters. So you can generate a report just on a particular project that you have, like one of the shelters, or you could generate a report on all of your shelters, or you can generate a report on all of the projects of one particular organization or agency that you have granted funds to. So it allows the jurisdictions, the recipients, to be able to kind of slice and dice that data up in a variety of different ways for different kind of uses. To that end, the Ecard tool is probably a good tool for COCs to be able to use, also to take a look at their shelter data, and we expect that at some time in the future that COCs will probably use the tool for that kind of thing. The report with filters, as you see, allows you to pick an agency or a project type or a project name and filter the data so that you get essentially what looks like, the CAPER now looks like a HUD Continuum of Care Annual Progress Report. The tables come out looking like the APR, if you're familiar with that, and this allows you to generate that kind of report for any one of these kinds of groupings. The combined report we've talked about a minute, and we'll just loop back to tell you that it's a report of all of the projects that have come into Ecard. So HUD knows that a homeless individual may sleep in 5 different shelters in a community in 1 year, and all 5 of those shelters are funded by ESG. And that person is going to be reported in each one of those shelters, and that the combined report is going to then show that one person as 5 individuals. They understand that. So you do not have to worry about getting an unduplicated count of homeless people that we're going for project counts here. What will happen, though, is if the city and county in the same area fund the same shelter, once it gets to the national to headquarters, we'll be able to pull out all of those duplicates from perhaps the county's report and just leave the city's report in. So we'll be, we're kind of deciding at this point which way duplication and unduplication works best in the ESG world. And so this is our attempt to do that. And then you're going to have one last tab in eCart. It's the Data tab. That tab is where all the data is actually loaded. So eCart will load all of the data into this one tab, and you're actually able to see the flattened data that comes out of the CSV file into the eCart tabs. The tab is locked. You can't change the data. We're going to show you how to delete the file if you want to delete it. But that's where your source data is, and we'll show you how you'll see the validation errors in the source data if you elect to do that. We had hoped that this whole thing was going to be a simple process and you were just going to attach eCart to the Econ Planning Suite. But no. So Marlise is going to tell you what to do now.
Okay. Thanks, Michelle. Before we get into the live demo, I'm going to run through this process that Michelle just introduced. So it's an embedding of the eCart tool, which is an Excel file, into a Word document. So for those of you who may have reviewed the eCart guidance when it was first posted, you may have noticed that the instructions have changed. And Michelle prefaced this by saying, if you've looked at eCart in the past, you consider it sort of just a test run and throw those away, download a new version of the eCart tool and guide today, and you'll have the most updated version. So if you see any old references to simply uploading the Excel file to CR65 screen, it's no longer the case. So why do we have these extra embedding steps? We need to do that because the Econ Planning Suite doesn't recognize Excel files, and for that reason the Excel file needs to be uploaded or embedded in a Microsoft Word document before attaching it to screen CR00 in the Econ Planning Suite. Only upload the Word document to screen CR00 because other screens won't recognize a file type other than JPEG. So you need a Word document that has the Excel file embedded, and you need to be attaching it to CR00. So let's go through the embedding process step by step, and also know that these instructions are included in the eCart guide in even more detail. So we break down the steps even more in the eCart guide. So let's say you as the recipient, you've finished uploading your subrecipient files, you've checked your data, you've resolved any validation errors, and now you're ready to attach this eCart into the Econ Planning Suite. To start the process of embedding the eCart Excel file into a Word document, you would, step one, open up a new Microsoft Word document and save it in a place where you can easily find it. Step two, from the Insert menu screen, click on Object. So make sure you're on the Insert tab and then look all the way over to the right of the Insert tab and you'll see Object, which is circled in red. Click on that and a dialog box is going to appear. So at that point, step three, click on the Create from File tab in that dialog box and then click Browse to search for and select the eCart file. Next slide. Step four, the next thing you're going to want to do is look to the middle right of the dialog box and check the box for Display as Icon. That's circled in red, and then click OK. And then step five, once you click OK, an icon of your eCart Excel file appears directly in your Microsoft Word document. So you can see right there that there's a screenshot of a Microsoft Word file and the icon of the Excel document, the Excel file right in there. And that's embedding. Now that your eCart Excel file is embedded in the Word document, save it in a place where you can easily find it for the next step, which is to upload the attachment to screen CR00 in the Econ Planning Suite. So right now in front of you is a screenshot of CR00 in the Econ Planning Suite in IDIS. The first thing you're going to do is click on Browse to Attach on that screen, and you can see the Browse to Attach link on the screenshot circled in red. So you're going to click on that. And then the next slide shows the dialog box that's going to appear. So you're going to enter a title for your eCart Word file in that first field. Choose a title that's going to allow your file to be easily recognized as the eCart attachment. So something simple like eCart, something that's going to flag it for both you and your field office representative that's reviewing. This will help you and your field office find it easily, and then click on Choose File to navigate to and select the eCart Word file. Once you've selected the eCart Word file, click Save, which will take you back to screen CR00. Okay, so now that you are back on screen CR00, go to the top of the screen and then click Save, and then Return. This is going to take you back to the main CAPER screen. And then from the main CAPER screen, click on CR00 just to confirm that the Word file is there with the embedded eCart successfully attached. As you can see right here in this screenshot in the red circled area, the eCart is successfully uploaded as attachment 1. So those were the processes for embedding eCart into a Word file and attaching the file to screen CR00 in the Econ Planning Suite. And again, just remember, if you didn't follow all the steps this time around, you can go and look at them in more detail in the eCart guide. And then you'll also have this recording of the webinar to refer to once we post it on the HUD Exchange. We just want to flag some main resources that can help you out in completing the ESG-CAPER screens and the eCart before we move to the live demonstration. The first resource there is a link to the eCart tool, which includes the eCart guide in the first tab. And I'm going to say it again, but it's important. Remember to discard any old versions of the tool and guide and go to the HUD Exchange today or tomorrow sometime recent after today to get a fresh updated version. The second resource is the Con Plan Desk Guide. And just reminding you to make sure that you use the March 2015 version and be on the lookout for upcoming updates of the Desk Guide, which will include references to eCart. And the final one that's there is the ESG-CAPER Generation Tool. So we haven't released it yet, but we will post it on the ESG listserv group as soon as it's available. So make sure you're signed up for the ESG listserv group. And I know that there was a question about the ESG-CAPER Generation Tool. It's basically a tool that can be used by ESG recipients whose HMIS system doesn't have the capability to run an HMIS report. So it's something that's been used in the past in lieu of an HMIS-generated report. So it's just another tool in your toolbox if necessary. So now we're getting ready for the live eCart demonstration. Michelle is going to review uploading subrecipient CSV files into eCart, identifying data validation errors, using the eCart to filter ESG data, and troubleshooting some common eCart problems. All right, Michelle, take it away.
Okay, we're switching screens here to our screen, and what you're going to see here on our screen is a file folder that we're going to drag on over to the center of the screen so that you can see that it's just a blank file folder that's the master file. So when you start this whole process, put a blank file folder either on your hard drive or on your server that's the master file. Then you're going to load that file up with each one of the CSV files that comes from the project. So this master file is sitting on the person at the jurisdiction's computer or server that is going to be in charge of loading up eCart. That person is going to receive the individual project level CSV files from each one of the agencies and is going to put those in that file. If the file comes to you zipped, and hopefully you can see the little zipper on this file. If you've never seen a zipped file, it looks just like a file folder in Microsoft, but it's got a zipper on it. You're going to take that zip file and unzip it. And to do that, you're going to just extract all, hit the extract button, and there it is. That's all there is to taking out the zip file, and then you're going to delete that zipped file. You no longer need that there. So if you get a zip file, you're going to unzip them. You can have 10 file folders here, or you could have 100 file folders here. Each one of these file folders that you're looking at represents a different project. So each shelter in your community would send in their own project file, and you would have a file folder inside your master file for each one of those shelters. You're going to then not change the name of the file folders or open the file folders or change the name of anything inside the file folders. If you start messing with the file folders, you run the risk of messing up the data. So just leave them alone. And open your eCart file that you downloaded from the HUD Exchange. When you open it, you see the instruction page, and you're going to go to Import Data. You're going to fill out, remember we talked about the jurisdiction filling out all of these fields that are the required fields, and then you're going to press that big click here to choose a folder. It's going to open up your kind of Windows browser thing that allows you to pick which folder you have. You're going to find that eCart master folder. You're going to click on that master folder, and then you've got to select this folder and import data now. You cannot just double, triple, quadruple click on the folder. You can click all day long and it's not going to come up. You've got to tell it to come up. As eCart is loading, you'll see it's spinning. The more files you elect to import at one time, the longer it's going to take. Literally, eCart is transferring everything from CSV on over, typing it all in, doing the validations, checking everything out, and making the reports, all in the time it took to spin. So we know if you import a few files, like 10 at a time, you're okay. If you try to import 50 projects at one time, you're going to be waiting 45 minutes. And that would not be unusual to be waiting that long, because it really is processing all of that data at once. And it's only an Excel spreadsheet. It's not Google that can process as fast as the Internet and Google can. When the import is complete, eCard tells you that, and you've got that little symbol there telling you it's complete. You click OK, and then you can take a look at your data. So what happens when you're looking at your data is that you see, again, if there's a duplicate project, and we had this loaded for you in advance to show you what it looks like if there's 2 project file folders in your eCart file, that there's a duplicate project, or that there's errors in other kinds of fields. So let's take a look at that duplicate project problem first, and we're going to get rid of one of those duplications. When we click on the at cell, you will see it whizzes you back to the data tab and shows you that Agency A RRH program is a duplicate of that Agency A RRH program on the top. It's going to highlight and give you a red indicator of which file is the duplicate. If you know you just imported it twice, it's no big deal. Pick one, take it out. If for some reason you had to remove the project from, you wanted to remove the project from your reports, perhaps it had bad data in it, and make the shelter, the project, resubmit a project to you, and then you've uploaded 2 of them, one with good data and one with bad data. You're going to have to take a look at the data in more detail by scrolling down the screen and looking at that data to see which project is the right project for you and which isn't. So we're going to take that duplicate project out by clicking here to delete one of the projects on the data tab. You'll see that column A opened up for you. You're finding your duplicate project. You're going to click on it and just check it and tell it to delete that row. It's going to make sure you really want to delete that row, and you delete it. You may delete one project at a time, or you may delete multiple projects at a time. If we go back to taking a look at the Check Your Data tab now, you're going to see that the error where you had duplicate files has gone away. And now what you've got left is files that have issues with their data. So Agency A RRH had a 19% error rate in their gender of children. They didn't have gender completed for their children, and all we're doing in validation is matching the total number of children that they recorded in the question 6A to the number of children in the table on Q10B. So we're just matching the totals to the totals. If the totals to the totals don't match, we're showing you that there's a Marlisa told you before, to do one of 2 things. The first is we encourage you to go back to the provider and ask the provider if they can fix their data. Do they realize that they didn't enter any of this information, or that they have such a high error rate? And if the provider is keeping paper files next to computer-generated files, then yeah, they probably can fix the data and generate a new CSV file for you. But if they were taking the data in real time, or they just didn't collect the data, there's no way to reproduce something that wasn't there in the first place. And at that point, that's when you would write on CR65 in the narrative section the issue that you had, the action you took, the plan that you have so that they'll be able to collect this data next year and submit it to HUD, and your field office, as they're reviewing that, will take a good look at that and let you move forward. We do understand that this is the first time that this kind of level data is coming out of many of these projects, and especially for the mass shelters, we recognize, HUD recognizes the difficulties that shelters have had collecting data. So they've had 2 years now of collecting data for very simple ESG reports, ESG-CAPER reports. This one is more complicated. We recognize that. We know there are going to be errors, and that's why the error rate of 25% is what HUD elected to use for this this project. If the error, you will be sorely tempted to try to correct the errors if you're kind of the anal retentive bookkeeper type person that many ESG agency folks, the jurisdiction folks are, because they want everything to match up and balance. Do not go back into your data tab and try to mess with the data. It's locked. It's locked on purpose so that you can't do that accidentally. If you want to correct it, you've got to delete the file and re-up a new file. You can't correct the data in Ecard. And there's a really good reason for that. Part of what we're trying to do here across HUD and across homeless management information is to get the HMIS systems across the country in much better data shape. And if you correct the mistakes here in Ecart, they're never going to be corrected back at the source data in the HMIS system, and they'll continue to be running as source problems for all kinds of things like system-wide performance measures or other kinds of reporting that communities are going to use. So we don't want you to correct the data here. We want you to be able to take a look at the reports that are generated. There's a combined report, and that you don't have to do anything with. Can you make that a bit bigger so that they can see it? It's always so small on these screens. This is just the table shelves, and as we roll through them, you're just going to see that the table shelves look like table shelves you've seen before. It adds up all of the projects, the information from each one of the projects, and shows it in a combined report. So all of the combined consolidated information from your ESG program is now here, right here in front of you, and you don't have to type in a number, you don't have to do any of the addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, it's all there for you. We think that sometimes you're going to want to look at this data on a jurisdiction level in different ways, and so there's a report with filters tab that allows you to select, allows you to identify some filters to take a look at the data. So if you click on that change filters on the data tab, it's going to bring you back to the data tab. It's going to allow you to select, perhaps you want to take a look at all of the RRH program data that's in the system. You're going to click on that RRH button. It's going to spin. You're going to go back to your report with filters, and now you're going to see the information just for the RRH projects that are in your database, and there's just the RRH information. So you want to know how many people, how many shelter bed nights you used. It's going to, by the number of people you served in emergency shelter, you know, or by just picking RRH, you're going to know how many people you had rolling through your RRH programs in the community. So the report with filters is really a feature just for you to use. HUD is really going to look at the combined report and the data quality part of the report, but this feature allows you to slice and dice the data in some different ways. eCart, we're not going to show you how to upload eCart for submission to HUD, because I think both the instructions and Marlisa's PowerPoint here have gone over that really thoroughly for you. And it really is a process of just following step by step the instructions as you're going through. I don't think you're going to remember it if we show it to you now anyhow. So it's just sitting down with those instruction sheets next to you and going ahead and doing that. So we're going to take this back to Dan and Joel and see if there are questions then.
Michelle, do we want to stay on this tool for just a moment in case we need to navigate around to answer a question?
Sure.
All right, so I am seeing some hands raised here. Go ahead, Joel.
Really, there's been, you know, there's a lot of answering questions, and if those of you, I mean, I hope even if you have been asking questions, that you're looking at the questions panel, because you know, when we do answer the questions, we do make those sort of public, so you can see them. And we've actually got such good coverage on this on the back end here that there are very few unanswered questions right now. So of the ones that are left, there's a couple, I guess, really about, and I think you probably touched on this, Michelle, but yeah, admin projects, folks that are not really who are getting ESG dollars, but not seeing, you know, clients per se, not serving clients per se, say like an HMIS lead, or you know, they're getting that HMIS funding. What are the requirements? Are they expected to do this process as well, or how is everything going to work?
Marlisa, you want to do that?
Sure, I can take this one. So if you are not serving any clients, any program participants, then this doesn't really apply to you at all, because this eCart it's all HMIS data based, and it's taking the place of the tables that had been filled out on screen CR65. So if you didn't have any data that you were filling out or contributing to CR65, then you don't need to worry about the eCart tool. So in general terms, if you're required to enter data into HMIS, then you'd be required to complete the eCart process to report on person served. But if you are, you know, just doing HMIS activities, then this wouldn't apply to you.
All right, Michelle, we have I think probably a pretty standard kind of question here about reporting for ESG projects that are partially funded by ESG. So the question essentially is, if not all of the services are funded by ESG, what do they do with the CAPER reporting?
So a typical scenario is that the services that you're talking about are, for example, you do case management in a shelter and only half of your shelter receives case management and services because your shelter is so big and that case manager can't serve everybody. The rules for ESG reporting are the same as they were in the past. For an emergency shelter, you report on everybody in the emergency shelter, regardless of whether the service touched that person or not. That would be the same thing for a day shelter. You would report on all of the persons in the day shelter, whether they got the service or not. You would report on all of the persons that were in the street outreach project, even if that street outreach worker is part of a team with other people and they have it in the system all as one project. it really should be in your HMIS system as 2 projects. But if perhaps your ESG project is supplementing your PATH project in a community and it's all in one project in the HMIS, you would report on everybody. And the only one where you may still, I think there are still some lingering problems, is if you put homeless prevention with rapid rehousing, you need to split those apart. They are 2 different project types. They have been 2 different project types for quite a while now, and the HMIS systems, all the guidance on ESG and all the guidance on RH, including the SSVF guidance, all the guidance across the country is those projects are to be split between homeless prevention and rapid rehousing. So you would need to make sure that those are split. If your rapid rehousing project had a bunch of different funding sources in the same project, and some funding was funding services and say ESG was funding the rental, you would report on everybody in the rapid rehousing project. If you put your state rapid rehousing project and your city rapid rehousing project in one project in your HMIS, in that case you're going to have problems, and those need to be pulled apart. They were supposed to have been set up separately, and we hope folks followed that and did set them up separately. If they did not, and there's issues there, if they put that in and the ask a question in the HUD exchange, we'll try to help them through what to do individually with that.
And this is Marlisa. I just want to flag for everyone that we do address more involved topics such as counting persons served for rapid rehousing or homelessness prevention projects that have multiple funding sources in the guidebook. So in the eCart guide, you can look towards the beginning when we mention, just general guidance for how to set up your rapid rehousing and homelessness prevention projects in HMIS. But as Michelle said, if you do have specific concerns, please do submit an AAQ and we can go through your situation individually.
All right, I'm going to try to take a couple of verbal questions here. I see that many of you have already raised your hand. So when I unmute you, you'll hear a little message on your end saying that you're unmuted. So Penny, you should be able to ask your question. Penny, are you there? All right, let's move on then to Donald. Donald, you're unmuted. All right, now you're muted again. Tammy.
If you all have your phones on mute, when he unmutes you, you've got to unmute your phone too.
All right, let's try Deborah. Deborah's, I can tell Deborah's on because she's submitting questions. So Deborah, go ahead and ask your question. All right, I'm going to lower everyone's hands here, and if you do still have questions that you want to ask verbally, just re-raise your hand again. All right, Jeffrey, go ahead.
I think we're having issues, Dan.
It seems that way.
Yeah. So
remember, if you don't dial in with your PIN number, I can't unmute you. So
right. So okay, I think we're kind of at our end of our time anyway, aren't we, Dan? So let's just say, maybe I should keep my mouth shut earlier. Now we have a whole bunch of questions that are unanswered, and I'm sorry we didn't get to everybody. But we do, we will dump all these out and answer them in some way, shape, or form for you. You can also, of course, submit a question to the Ask a Question portal on the HUD Exchange. Make sure to identify your question, as categorize it as being for ESG, so it goes more directly to the folks who can answer it. Anyone else has anything else to add?
No, I just want to thank everybody. I just want to thank everybody very much for tuning in, and we appreciate your patience with this new process and your dedication. And also, it's exciting to share this new step with ESG program reporting. We'll be able to say a lot more about what ESG accomplishes on a daily basis in your communities. Thank you.
Bye, all.